Hello, Cleveland, and welcome to season 6 of the Dogland podcast. This is our season premiere. We are excited to get ready for yet another season of Cleveland Browns football. I am your host, Jackson McCurry, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, Anthony Jokey. Anthony, it's season 6, man. We've made it another year of Browns football, man. Are you ready for this?
It's funny how every year the summer just kind of like flies by, and in preparation for the football season, it's already almost August, which training camp is here, and yeah, I'm ready. It's going to be an interesting season. There's still a lot of things to determine as we head towards Week 1 against Carolina, but it's exciting, and of course, it's always great to sit here and talk with you like we have for the past 6 years. This is crazy, man.
Yeah. I mean, it's wild, and you're right about the summer flying. Like literally, like we do the draft, and we'll do a couple other episodes if there's any breaking news. But it's like once mini camp's over, which is in like late June, and we really don't even talk then. Like we always take our usual summer break, just because. I mean, like credit to the other podcasts that go through and do podcasts week after week, some even day after day. But it's like we take a break because we just want to talk straight football, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day. It's about the Cleveland Browns, and it's good. Like that summer went by so fast, and now we're back, and obviously we're recording on Wednesday night, and training camp started today, and it's just now we're getting news day after day, sometimes hour after hour, and it's pumping out so fast, and I'm just glad football's back.
Yeah, it's exciting, and we'll be here as much as we can to talk about all the news. And there's a lot of breaking news that we're still waiting for, but of course we'll be here to talk about it and dissect it all down when it does happen.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we'll obviously start with the elephant in the room. We, as well as everybody else that's a Browns fan, a Browns, media member, probably even everybody in the organization is waiting on the Deshaun Watson suspension news. It's been a couple weeks since both sides, the NFL and the NFL Players Union, submitted their reports to the federal judge, Sue Robinson, and we are still waiting on the announcement. It could come anytime now. Anthony, will probably come right after we're done recording this episode, because that's typically how things go for us. But
yeah,
I know
it never
Adam
fails.
Oh, it absolutely never fails. We've been doing this 5 years, entering our 6th season, and it's just every time we either do it right after we're done recording an episode, or like it's always after we record. The only time we ever got anything before we recorded an episode was when Sashi Brown got fired, and that's literally the only time I ever remember anything like majorly happening right before we hit the record button. But I know Adam Schefter was on with Rothman and Ice down in Columbus. I think it's 97.1 The Fan down there. And he said, and it's funny because he said he emailed Sue Robinson a few times, I'm guessing in the last couple of days, to see if there was any update. And Schefter said he was told that he had to stop emailing Sue Robinson. But he also said, and Mary Kay both said today, that they are hearing that maybe next week there will be a ruling. Now, obviously, training camp started today. Deshaun was out there in the practice facility because it was indoors, out there practicing with the team. He can do that as long as the suspension isn't an indefinite one, which was rumored, obviously, early on in the summer. But now it seems to be now that a lot of people are expecting it anywhere between 2 to 8 games. But, Anthony, we're just waiting on, Sue Robinson to make her decision. And, when it does, we'll see what it is. And obviously, whatever her decision is, that's probably going to be the final one, unless the league's going to attempt to fight it. But this has been a long summer in terms of, what's going to happen with Deshaun Watson and how the Browns will move forward after that.
It has been a long summer, and I've done a decent job myself of just like tuning out the suspension talk, because it's just been the same thing every single day for the last like 2 months or so, if not longer. I expect somewhere 6 to 8 games. I think that's where we're both sitting at. I would be surprised if it's anything less than like 5 or 6, and I would also be surprised if it's more than 10. But we've just been sitting here waiting for it, and honestly, I think that the Browns probably have a good feel on where Sue Robinson sits. They went out and signed Brissett. They just signed Josh Rosen as well. Um, you know, there's going to be a battle for the backup spot and the third spot behind Watson, but you know they're obviously prepared for it. And if he's suspended 6 to 8 games, there's still a good chance they could win 3 or 4 of those, go 500 in that time span. I think that would be a major uh, victory for the Browns. But when he comes back, Jack, I don't think it's going to be the Deshaun Watson of old right away. It's a good thing right now he's able to participate in training camp because he missed all the last season, and there's still a lot of rust that he needs to knock off his entire bodies in terms of football and throwing and whatnot. So uh, there's a lot he needs to do to get ready for the season. And if he's allowed to play in the preseason games, if he's suspended, which I still think he's able to, as long as it's not an indefinite one, like you mentioned, I think that's going to be huge for him, depending on how long the suspension is for. He needs to get all the reps that he can. And the tricky part is, well, if he's not going to be out there for the first 6 to 8 weeks, then how do you split his reps and Jacoby Brissett, who's actually going to be out there week one until Deshaun comes back. So there's a lot they have to figure out. But the fact that he's able to go out there right now and participate in training camp is going to be helpful to knock off some of the long rest that he's had for the past year or so.
Yeah, that's definitely a huge thing. Like everybody expects, Watson to come back and be the guy he was before everything happened, but you're right. He hasn't played a game in 18 months right now. It'll be, we're expecting October, November from the first time he gets back on the field. So that's almost 2 full years since he had taken a snap in an NFL game. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. And it was brought up today, Kevin Stefanski met with reporters and was asking like how the reps are going to be distributed. And he said they're both going to get a ton of reps, but it's like, if he's suspended, like we're saying, 6 to 8 games, and are you going to try to split up the reps? Because, my belief is if he's suspended, whatever the suspension is, you need to get Jacoby Brissett ready. Now, he's been a starter in the league. I'm sure he's going to work hard to make sure he's ready and, value every snap he gets, and might even do some mental reps in his head or, throw with some of these receivers after practice is over. But, you got to get whoever's going to be the starting quarterback for the Carolina game ready. And we all know it's going to be Jacoby Brissett, most likely. So you have to get him ready. The preseason is going to be fascinating to me just because how much are they going to play Watson? Because you don't want him to get injured, obviously, because he is your long-term franchise quarterback right now as things stand. So you got to protect him. You got to protect that investment. But at the same time, you want him to get some reps, get him familiar and comfortable with this offense in a game-type environment. That's why I also think, when the Eagles come to town and have the joint practices, and I think mid-August, that's going to be valuable for him too, just to go up against an opposing defense to get a good feel of, some form of competition. I think that's why those joint practices are such a valuable thing. So it's going to be interesting to see how this suspension goes out, when it's going to come out, because hopefully this doesn't drag too long into training camp, because like we said, we got to get Jacoby Brissett ready for week one against Carolina, because he's obviously going to be the starting quarterback for that game.
Yeah, barring anything, major happening in that time frame. But yeah, he's going to be the week one starter. It's very ironic who he could face week one. We'll talk about that at a later time. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a tough thing getting all these guys ready for week one, especially the quarterbacks. I know things will come into a clearer picture once Sue Robinson makes her decision, and if that's the end of it, I don't know if there's going to be more after she makes her decision, whether Goodell rejects it and adds his own suspension to it, or if Deshaun Watson appeals it. It plays out like the Ezekiel Elliott thing, where it plays out in court for a while. So there's certainly a lot still to be determined, but as of right now, we expect Brissett to start week 1, and there's a lot of new faces, at least in the receiver room this year, that they have to work through. I know, the other position groups have kind of remained the same, but there's a lot they need to work through and build chemistry on, and hopefully they're able to do so here in the next few weeks with training camp and then the preseason.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned Josh Rosen. Now the Browns signed him last week. Because there was reports that they were going to look into adding another quarterback. The Jimmy Garoppolo rumors got debunked rather quickly. Mary Kay, among others, had said that the Browns looked into him at the beginning of the process when they were looking at options to upgrade for Baker. Obviously Garoppolo is going to move on from the 49ers, and that got debunked. But they brought in Rosen and AJ McCarron, which was so funny because obviously the whole thing with Hugh Jackson and Sashi and the fax machine back from 2017 season, I think it was. But they signed Rosen, who's on his 5th or 6th NFL team now. Like, he's still only 25 years old, which is amazing because, he was part of that 2018 class with Baker and Darnold and Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, and things have not gone well for Josh Rosen in his career, but he's coming in, going to have an opportunity to be Brissett's backup. Obviously, I think him and Josh Dobbs will compete for that. But one media member said that, like, Stefanski didn't sound very enthused about Rosen, which makes me just think he could be just a camp arm, just another guy to bring into the and see what's going to happen. But it was interesting that they went with Rosen to see what he could bring, maybe be a practice squad candidate if things don't shake out very well with Josh Dobbs. We'll see. I know there's been a lot of uproar about the number Josh Rosen was given or chose. We don't know that whole situation, but that was made a big ordeal. But what's your thoughts on them bringing Rosen in to be essentially the 4th quarterback / camp arm?
Well, I guess if Browns got the quarterback that I had quarterback 1 in that draft, which
I've heard that a lot the last week.
Don't ever let me pick quarterbacks because I am terrible at looking at those in the draft. I have to sit down and reevaluate how I think about those someday. But he's had quite the journey. In his short NFL career, he's been all over the place. He started in Arizona, and then they ended up drafting Kyler Murray. He moved to, I think it was
Miami
next, and then they got Tua. So he's just kind of had some bad luck wherever he's gone, and I know a lot of that has also to do with his performance as well. It's quite possible he's just here to be a camp arm, and maybe he's somebody that they keep on the practice squad all year long. Maybe they're like scout team guy or something like that. But it's been a long road for him, and I don't know how much noise he is going to make. But right now he has the potential to maybe be the 3rd guy behind Brissett. I'm sure him and Josh Dobbs are going to have quite the battle because one of those 2 guys is going to be at least on the roster week 1 and for a while. If depending on Watson's suspension, they're going to have at least 2 quarterbacks, maybe 3, for a better part of the season. But it'll be interesting to see what he's able to do. I know, obviously he has a lot of skills that made him a top draft pick way back when. So I say way back when it's only been what
4 years.
4 years. So he has skills. It's just I think the thing with him is it's been a lot of the mental aspects. So hopefully he's able to work hard and impress his coaching staff. And I it's kind of interesting because you look at the other quarterbacks in that draft class. You look at Sam Darnold, you look at Baker Mayfield. They're kind of all in the same situation right now. They're all fighting for their NFL careers. They're all winding down on their rookie contracts. I know Rosen is kind of different because he's been released, but and then signed to like a 1-year deal. But they're all kind of fighting for NFL careers right now, and this might be their last chance to show teams that they're on now, or potential teams in the future, that they still have something to give. And quarterbacks in this league tend to, especially high draft picks, tend to get chance after chance to be a part of an organization. And you kind of see that with Rosen here, with it being his 5th or 6th team. But he has a lot he needs to prove if he wants to, maybe be a starter down the road, or even just a solid backup for the rest of his career. So he's definitely going to have to come in here and compete very hard and work very hard. And he's just kind of, like I said, in the same boat as like Sam Darnold and Baker at the moment. They're all fighting for their NFL careers at this point, and he just has to come in here and work pretty hard.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we all seen it coming out of UCLA. He had the arm talent, and he put up some solid numbers in his 3 years at UCLA, but he hasn't been in good situations. Obviously, he backed up Garoppolo and for a little bit in San Fran. He was on the practice squad with Brady for a little bit in Tampa. Last year, he backed up Matt Ryan. So he's been around solid veterans, but like it has to be a mental thing with him. And I think it probably has a lot to do with how his first couple years went in Arizona and Miami. I mean, that wears on you as a quarterback. We've seen all the guys that, were highly touted prospects for the Browns just come in and like, they had all the tools in the world, but like if the surrounding area around you is not a good place, you're not going to achieve very much success in the NFL. So, maybe him coming here, being around solid coaches and everything, maybe that'll help him find another home somewhere after the preseason, unless he latches on and is the third quarterback here, whether that's, backing up Brissett or ending up on the practice squad once Watson's suspension is lifted. So, he's still only 25, which is amazing. So there's still time for him. But like you said, he's on his 6th team now. So it's kind of like he's entering like the last legs of his NFL career, like you mentioned with Darnold and Mayfield. But I mean, it's amazing that he didn't work out, because I know a lot of people, yourself included, were very high on him in the draft process back in 2018. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what his role is here and what the Browns truly think of him once we get to the preseason and get to see him actually out on the field.
Yeah, and he's going to have the opportunity to get in quite a bit of reps, this preseason. So we'll see what he's able to do. I think when it comes down to like the battle, I think he could definitely beat out Josh Dobbs. But
I think so too, for sure.
It's just a matter of if it's mentally all there, and if he's able to come in and listen and do a good job and compete well. And we'll find that out here over the next few weeks.
Without a doubt. As we get into some training camp discussion, some key players are already on the sidelines because of, previous injuries, and they were added to the PUP list or the non-football injury list when camp opened yesterday when the veterans reported. But last Friday, David Bell, team's 3rd-round pick, a lot of high hopes for him. They can come in and help that wide receiver room. He went on the PUP list. And then Tuesday, Denzel Ward and Jack Conklin went on. Denzel Ward's dealing with a foot injury from minicamp. Jack Conklin's obviously recovering from the torn patella injury he suffered last season. And then Anthony Walker went on the non-football injury list, so something must have happened during off-season training and everything. So there's a couple other names. Sheldon Day was another one, and Javon Wims is on a non-football illness list, so he was the only player that wasn't in the facility today. So hopefully he's okay. I don't think it's a COVID thing because they haven't really. I don't know what they're doing exactly with that whole process now. So hopefully Javon Wims is okay. But Anthony, you look at the list. David Bell, Denzel Ward, Jack Conklin, and Anthony Walker. Those are 4 big contributors to this football team. And right now they're on the sidelines. None of these injuries sound serious. It sounds like they should be hopefully ready by week 1 against Carolina, which I think is the main goal. I think it's everybody's goal just to get to week 1 and be 100%. But David Bell especially, I think, is the most significant one because this puts him behind the 8 ball as a rookie, not being on the field, getting acclimated with Deshaun Watson and Jacoby Brissett, but also, finding his spot in that wide receiver room.
Yeah, and we saw, kind of in Anthony Schwartz's rookie year, he had those injuries early on, the concussion. So, and we saw what that did to his rookie season. So it's certainly, imperative for David Bell to, heal up as quick as possible and get out there. Obviously, there's new quarterbacks to build some chemistry with. He's probably going to be, the second, third receiver at this point, just because that's all they have because of all the changes they've made at receiver this offseason. So, he's just going to have to hopefully get out there as quickly as possible to, be ready for the season and ready to start. Conklin worries me because he had those injuries last year and he's coming back from those. Hopefully he's able to get out there soon and, work with the rest of the offensive line. It's interesting because I'm kind of of the thought, Jack, with, Watson probably being suspended for, the first half of the season. I'm okay if the injuries happen now. Because, when Watson comes back, in the second half of the season, most likely, the Browns are going to have to be 100% and ready to go for the rest of the season if they want a chance to make the playoffs. So, if there's minor things now, as long as it doesn't, currently impede progress, to making things better, how good Denzel Ward is. He's a proven player. If he, misses a little bit of time now, that's okay. He's going to be fine. But, guys like David Bell, who's a rookie who needs to learn, Conklin, who's already coming back from injury, needs to get back into, the swing of things. Anthony Walker, needs to be good for that defense. So if it's minor things, I'm okay with it now, but obviously we would prefer them to be out there for as long as possible. But hopefully these guys can get relatively healthy really soon and be out there for most of training camp with the rest of their team.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think one of the positives is we are entering year 3 where we have the same offense and the same defense. So it's not, these injuries aren't, outside of Bell, aren't too major because we don't have to worry about our guys learning new systems again, getting acclimated with new coaches and all this. It's good that we have some continuity as it pertains to head coach and defensive coordinator and offensive coordinator. This hasn't happened with the team since the early 90s with Belichick and Nick Saban and stuff. We had, head coaches come back 3 years in a row since 99, and Butch Davis did it for 4 straight years. Romeo did it for 4 straight years, but having the same continuity in each level of the team, I mean, that's a great thing. But yeah, it's good that these are only minor injuries. Like Denzel, I know Zach Jackson reported wasn't wearing any boot or brace or anything. I think they're just being cautious with him, don't want to, there's no need to rush him out there. Jack Conklin was out there with the team today, doing some stuff during the team's walkthrough. So I feel like he'll probably be ready here in the next couple of weeks. They're just being cautious because, it's a serious injury with the patella injury. So I'm not too worried. Like I said, everybody was out there today except Javon Wim. So that's a good thing that 89 of the 90 guys were out there on the field. So, that's great. I mean, just get them all ready for week one. I think that's the biggest goal. Like, we know how much, preseason is a snooze fest. Like, it's only good for some of these guys, like the rookies and the guys fighting for roster spots. But, for the veterans like Conklin and Ward, just make sure they're ready for week one against Carolina. That's the biggest goal at this point.
Yeah. Try to get them all ready to go. And, like you said, get them ready for week one.
So every year, Anthony, we do this, us and other Browns podcasts, other Browns writers, etc. We always talk about camp battles. Now we come into this year, there's big expectations for the Browns. We have a good idea what the majority of this roster is going to look like, but there's always camp battles that we're going to keep an eye on. There's always, position groups that we come in and are like, we'd like to see more of this. So we're going to talk about that the remainder of this podcast. Anthony, when you look at the camp battles, what's the one that you're going to be watching the closest during training camp and the preseason?
I think the one I'm going to watch the closest is the running backs after Nick Chubb. You have quite a handful of guys back there. Kareem Hunt, Dearness Johnson, Jerome Ford, Demetric Felton, who's going to kind of flip-flop in between running backs and receivers. John Kelly as well is listed back there. I don't expect the Browns to keep, all of those guys come, final roster cut downs. I can see them moving on from Dearness Johnson if a team is interested, Kareem Hunt if they get the right offer, depending on how some of these other guys perform. I think the most likely one to not make it through all of training camp is probably Dearness. I know they invested a 5th round pick into Jerome Ford, and I think there's a lot to like there with him. But there's certainly a whole handful of guys in that running back room that have a lot of talent, and I think the Browns can use that to their benefit if a team is looking for a running back come end of the preseason, because with who they have on offense, I don't think they're going to be able to keep all of these running backs in this room. Obviously, Nick Chubb is going to be here, but with it being Hunt, Dearness Johnson, Jerome Ford, Demetric Felton, John Kelly Jr., I only see them keeping a couple of those guys after their final roster cut down. So I think it's going to be very interesting to watch that entire position and see how all those guys perform in training camp and in the preseason by the time we get to roster cutdowns.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you on that one. I would even throw Johnny Stanton in there. I've seen some photos and videos today, like Chubb and Hunt were lined up in the backfield together with Watson, which we've seen that at the end of the 2019 season when Hunt made his debut with the team after his suspension. So it's kind of a idea where I think, Stefanski's going to want to open things up more with, Watson at quarterback to what you can have some more ideas. Now, Stanton is our only fullback right now. I could see him maybe moving to tight end and being like in a little H-back role. But, this running back position group is really going to be fascinating to see. Behind Chubb, Hunt's on his last year of his deal. Dearness is on a 1-year deal. I would say Jerome Ford's safe. Even though he's a 5th round pick, there's a chance he could flop and the Browns move on. And then you mentioned Felton, who's going to be in between wide receiver and running back. It's going to be interesting to see what the Browns do with that. I know Nick Chubb said he wants to keep Kareem Hunt here long term. I don't know how an extension like that's going to work because Chubb's salary is going to increase significantly over the next couple of years. But that whole room's going to be fascinating because I know a lot of people are going to be disappointed either way, any way they go with that room, because it's one of the deepest position groups we have on this team right now.
Yeah, it really is. And, there's always going to be, a team looking for maybe a second running back or maybe even a first running back come the end of the preseason. So The Browns are definitely going to have a hard decision because it's tough when you have a lot of talent in one position group, because it's tough to keep everybody. But I think for the right offer, the Browns would be willing to move on from any of these guys, especially with some of the recent investments they've made in the position, like giving Nick Chubb a contract extension and drafting Jerome Ford in the fifth round this year. So for the right offer, I think they'll be willing to listen on anybody except Nick Chubb.
Oh, for sure. And, with us giving up significant draft capital to get Deshaun Watson, if, Andrew Berry wants to replenish that, he definitely could with any of these running backs in a potential trade. For me, the camp battle that I'm going to be watching is the wide receiver room. And it's primarily just going to be behind Amari Cooper and Donovan Peoples-Jones, because I think those two are perfect in their roles as wide receiver 1 and 2. But when I look at the rest of the room right now, it's a big mystery to me. Now, David Bell, obviously a lot of people are pegging him as the slot. He's obviously on the PUP list right now, so he's going to be a little bit behind the 8 ball until he comes back from injury. But then you look at the rest of the room, it's a lot of unknown. You have Anthony Schwartz entering his second year, tough rookie year, dealt with injuries, little inconsistency, which he has owned up on. He did an interview with Mary Kay talking about the play where Baker Mayfield got hurt, and he said that he made mistakes there. He also said Baker made mistakes as well, which I thought was very interesting. That was the first player to make public comments about Baker in a negative way. But when you look at the rest of the room, Jakeem Grant was a free agent signing. He's going to be our primary return man, but has experience at making plays at the wide receiver position. You have Jamarcus Bradley, who's been around for a couple years. They drafted Michael Woods in the 6th round. And then there's 2 undrafted guys that has a lot of people's attention. Mike Harley Jr. out of the Miami Hurricanes, one of their best receivers in school history. When you think of the guys that they've had there, Harley ranks up there with them. Going to be interested to see what he brings to the table. And then Isaiah Weston, the undrafted rookie out of Northern Iowa, put up some incredible numbers there. You compare him to Christian Watson, who was 2nd-round pick for Green Bay. Their numbers are pretty ideal. Weston could even be better. The only knock is he's like 25 years old. So he is very old for a draft pick or for a 2022 draft prospect. So this wide receiver room is a complete toss-up, I think, outside of Peoples-Jones, Cooper, and I would say David Bell is a lock. You could say Anthony Schwartz is a lock, but the rest of the room is so fascinating. Add into the fact that, like we said, Demetric Felton is rotating back and forth between running back and wide receiver. Anthony, this room's going to be so fascinating to watch through camp. If nobody jumps out and impresses big time, I could see them going out and getting a veteran. I was hoping Julio Jones could be an option before he signed with Tampa Bay, but Cole Beasley's still out there, Emmanuel Sanders is out there, and who knows, maybe Andrew Berry finds somebody that becomes available late in preseason as a trade target or free agent pickup. But I think this wide receiver position group could be in flux throughout training camp and preseason.
And the tough part about it is they have 2 different quarterbacks they're mainly going to be working with because of the Watson suspension. So, there's certainly that aspect of it that is not going to make things any easier as well. So, there's a lot for a lot of these players to prove. You touched on a lot of that. So it's definitely going to be one of those intriguing situations. I expect Peoples-Jones to bounce back. I think Amari Cooper is going to surprise some people. I think he has a lot to prove this year, and I think that he's going to have a solid season. Obviously, again, that depends on quarterback play, but and there's a handful, even more than a handful of players that you mentioned behind him that have a lot to prove as well. So this is certainly an intriguing position group to watch. There's going to have to be some guy, one of these players who steps up in a big time role to be able to make this position group viable. I think I saw a post a couple weeks ago, and it was like ranking the worst wide receiving cores in the NFL, and I think the Browns were like 10th worst, and I say that's probably pretty fair because there's a lot of unknown right now. You know, you have Amari Cooper who's played well in his career, but behind him there's still a lot of unproven talent. So some of these guys are going to have to really step up, and it's not going to be easy with the quarterback situation, and it's not going to be easy to add anybody via trade because of all the draft capital that they've already spent. So, you know, they're not going to be able to get like a major star or anything to come in here, probably. So, what you see is what you're going to have. Maybe you find, you know, a guy who will be like the 5th or 6th receiver come the end of the training camp preseason. But these players all have a ton to prove, and they're really going to have to, you know, show themselves, improve themselves in training camp and preseason here as we head towards the season.
What position group, Anthony, right now do you have the most concern with? Like, there's just so much unknown, and you're just very concerned about it right now as training camp gets underway.
I don't want to say like a whole position group. I think there's like maybe one position that I'm worried about, but it could kind of relate to the whole thing too. But the offensive line, and just particularly center, I know we've been grateful to have J.C. Treader for the last 3 or 4 years on this team, and he did a fantastic job. Now that position goes to Nick Harris, who they drafted in the 5th round back in 2020. You know, he finally gets his opportunity to start this year, and I think when you look at the rest of the offensive line, you have, you know, Jack Conklin coming back from injury. You have Jedrick Wills, who is entering his 3rd season now and needs to play better as well. So I think, you know, center, I think, is one of the bigger positions that obviously they have to communicate to the rest of the offensive line now. It's very helpful that he has Joe Bitonio on his left and Wyatt Teller on his right to help him out. But he's going to have to, you know, be one of the leaders of that offensive line when the season starts. And because we've had such a sure thing there for the last 3 or 4 years, Jack, I think that when you have somebody unproven on that offensive line, I think that's certainly an opportunity, you know, something you really have to pay attention to and watch out for. I know they think pretty highly of him, and I'm confident that he's going to do a good job, but he certainly has a lot he has to prove. And, you know, there's those couple other guys on the offensive line as well that, you know, need to play better than they have than last year.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Harris is obviously the guy everybody's watching because he's replacing such a immense talent that J.C. Treader was. I know that there was a segment of him on Building the Browns where he like transformed his body during the offseason to get ready for this opportunity. He's been working hard. He's put some weight on. He's been working in the gym, the weight room like crazy. But obviously they signed Ethan Posick, who was a decent center for Seattle. As bad as the offensive line got a bad rap protecting Russell Wilson over the years. And then they also drafted Brock Hoffman in the 7th round out of Texas. Or no, he was undrafted free agent. I'm sorry. They drafted Dawson Deaton, who also can play center, but they have him listed as right guard right now. So they added guys behind him, including a veteran who's had success. So obviously Harris is going to have to compete for it. But I mean, everybody expects him to be the center. He had an amazing performance against Green Bay where he was going up against Kenny Clark, who's an all-pro type defensive tackle. So, you know, we're all hopeful for Harris that he can anchor the offensive line. Like you said, it's good that he's got 2 all-pro caliber guards in between him. So hopefully it's a smooth transition up front. But, yeah, I mean, the offensive line as a whole, you got Conklin coming off an injury. Jedrick Wills dealt with injury last year. There's a lot of pressure on him entering his 3rd year. But But yeah, the offensive line is going to be something to watch. I know nobody's really talking about it a lot, but I think them as a whole unit, it's going to be interesting to see how they transition into a new era, so to speak, with a new piece in the middle of it. And this is a big year for some other guys as well.
Yeah, it definitely is because, Wills is going to be looking towards a contract extension soon. They have to find out, if Conklin is going to be the guy long term at right tackle. So there's certainly a lot that they're going to be looking at this season. And, if Nick Harris doesn't work out, that's another position that they're going to have to, look for in the offseason. So it's this offensive line is a really important aspect of this team, a position group that's played really well over the years recently. So there's certainly a lot this coaching staff is going to look for with this position group, and hopefully they're able to perform pretty well.
Yeah, for sure. The position group that I have the most concern with entering camp in the preseason is interior defensive line. Now, I know they look for certain characteristics and traits in these defensive tackles. It's a very young room. Obviously, you have Jordan Elliott, Perion Winfrey, who they drafted in the 4th round, Tommy Togiai, who they drafted in the 4th round last year. They added 2 undrafted guys after the draft. Sheldon Day's coming back on a 1-year deal. And they also added Taven Bryan, who's a former 1st-round pick for Jacksonville that they picked up in free agency. But I just don't feel very confident in this group right now. I know there's been plenty of praise during the offseason about Jordan Elliott. I know Chris Kiffin, the defensive line coach, I had heard that on another Browns podcast that, the guy that left at the end of the last season and came back for off-season workouts and mini camp and everything wasn't the same Jordan Elliott. So he's getting a ton of praise from the coaching staff. This is year 3 for him. So this is a big year for him because obviously as a 3rd-round pick, he's potentially up for a contract extension after this year. So if he can make a big jump, this could go towards him getting a nice, whether it's an extension from the Browns or potential free agent deal in 2 years. So but I look at this room and I don't feel the greatest about it. I hope I'm proven wrong. I know that, there was rumors about Ndamukong Suh that, people rebuffed saying that there was no interest from Cleveland. There's been talk about Sheldon Richardson potentially coming back. So it'll be interesting to see these first couple weeks how the defensive tackle group performs because, I'm sure Barry has guys targeted that he will go try to get in free agency or potentially even in a trade. Barry's always looking to upgrade positions if he's able to. So this defensive tackle room is definitely going to be one to watch during training camp and preseason for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously helps that they have Myles Garrett on one side and Clowney on the other side, but they need these guys in the middle to perform well. I think of maybe a veteran would help in this group. You mentioned Sheldon Richardson, but there's a lot of younger players here, and kind of like the receivers that we talked about. Somebody, if not more than one, is going to need to step up for this position group to play well. I think a lot of people have a lot of hopes for Perion Winfrey. He's certainly going to be maybe the most energetic guy on that defensive line. And that might be an understatement, but
without a doubt,
you have to play well. That energy has to match performance, and there's a lot of these guys who still have a lot to prove. They're very young on that, in that interior. This is only Elliott's 3rd year. Winfrey's a rookie. Togiai's 2nd year. Roderick Perry undrafted. Glenn Logan undrafted. So there's a lot of younger players in that interior group. So hopefully a couple of these guys, are able to do something. And I'm willing to place a solid bet that there will be a couple guys added, before the end of the preseason or roster cutdowns that they'll sign or claim to help out this interior, because it definitely I think Jack needs it. I don't know if this is going to be one of those guys for the receiving core, but I think definitely when you look at the interior of this defensive line, uh, they're definitely going to be able to use some help. Now, I guess the good part about this is the rest of the defense is really solid. I mentioned, obviously the two defensive ends, but you look at the linebackers, you look at the secondary. A lot of these guys are in their second and third year in the system. So I think the defense is going to play well overall. If there's one or two players that are able to step up in the interior of the defensive line, this defense has the ability to do something special, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the majority of this defense came back. Like I said, Taven Bryan was the big addition up front. They added Chase Winovich up front for some pass rush depth. They drafted Alex Wright, but the majority of the defense came back. They added depth in the draft, a couple free agent signings, but everybody's back. Joe Woods is back for another year as defensive coordinator. It's great to have continuity and have such a young defense with so much talent that played really well at the end of last year. What a lot of people were calling for Joe Woods' head especially after the New England game, Myles Garrett included. But they made adjustments and they played like the top 10 defense we all thought they could be down the stretch. It was just unfortunate the offense sputtered towards the end. But I'm looking forward to seeing what this defense can do, especially, right now Greg Newsome is the nickel. And, that means that you got Greedy, you got AJ Green, and you got Martin Emerson fighting for the other outside corner spot. So that's another interesting battle as well that we didn't talk about. But, I feel really good about this defense. And it's funny, like the way people are predicting the Browns are going to be last in the division and they're going to struggle. I think a lot of that's banked on the Watson suspension, but people forget how talented this team is, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, this defense is able to be. I don't even want to say like a top 10 defense. If they're able to play in the top half of the NFL, so 16th or better, this defense is going to keep them in most games. And this defense certainly has the potential, like I mentioned, to be something special. I think, with a lot of these guys coming back, and hopefully a couple of those interior defensive linemen work out. I think Greedy is going to play well this year. I know he's headed towards this is last year of his deal, right?
Yes.
So, there's obviously going to be extra motivation there from him to play well. So, this defense, I honestly think could be something special. And did I see right that there's interest from Tack McKinley to come back as long as he heals up okay? Did I remember seeing that right?
Yeah, the report I think was he's progressing, but he wanted to sign with a team at some point during training camp, but it's going to be iffy. I mean, obviously he had the Achilles injury. We remember Olivier Vernon had it 2 years ago. He's never made it back to the field. Obviously McKinley's younger, but that might be a signing, midway through the year. There is a mutual interest, I think, between both sides. So, McKinley coming back would be nice. Add another pass rusher to the group, like we've always said during the history of this podcast. You could never have enough.
I don't know why that's not on a T-shirt yet for us, but
we'll do it at some point. But yeah, I mean, I'd be open to bringing McKinley back. We have Winovich and Wright, and we have some other guys behind them. So, but I mean, I'm sure we could find a spot and a role for McKinley if needed.
And I can't remember correctly. Did they play him inside at all, or I can't remember if they bumped him in, or maybe they bumped in like Clowney and kept him on the end.
They probably did that. They might have done that more likely.
I have to go back and look.
Same.
Maybe that would help with their interior defensive situation in specific situations. Whether it be like third and long or something.
Right. Looking at the rest of this group real quick, is there like a player or anything that you're just like ready to see during camp that's going to catch your eye, like you want to watch very closely during the preseason?
Yeah, but I don't know how much he's going to play in the preseason. Like, I really believe that Amari Cooper is going to come out here and have a really good season. I think he has so much to prove. I know a lot of it is based on the quarterback play that he's going to have behind him, but um, you saw what the Browns traded for him, and you've seen some of the other deals that wide receivers have gotten this offseason. I honestly believe he's going to come in here and have a really good season. At least 1,000-yard season for the Browns this year. Um, he certainly has that talent to do so. Um, I'm just really looking forward to seeing him on the field.
Yeah, he definitely gets overlooked. I think he did in Dallas. Obviously they moved him because there was so much talent in that wide receiver room, but the Browns were able to get him for what they got. I'm definitely anxious to see him as well. But there's a guy in the tight end room that I'm definitely going to have my eye on throughout the draft process. His name is Marcus Santos Silva. He's a converted basketball player that's trying to make it as a tight end. He played at Texas Tech, never played football. The Browns signed him right after the draft, but I've heard some good things about him. And when you look at the tight end room, Anthony, you got David Njoku, you got Harrison Bryant, and then I think tight end 3 is up for grabs. We've talked to people that said, maybe they signed a veteran. I know Darren Fells is still out there, aka the playmaker from the 2018 season. But there's a few guys that are fighting for that tight end 3 spot, and the athleticism that Santos Silva brings to the table. He's still very raw, obviously, as a football player, but he's definitely going to be a guy I watch during the preseason, because that tight end 3 spot is up for grabs. And we've seen guys that have played college basketball that have converted to tight end and been successful. So if he can, provide anything in the preseason, and the Browns think his potential is there, maybe they keep him around and don't add a veteran behind Njoku and Bryant.
Yeah, there's a handful of guys like you mentioned, Miller, Forrestal, who's in his second year, and then you have 3 rookies: Nakia, Griffin Stewart, Zaire, Mitchell, Payton, Marcus, Santos Silva. Boy, it's a lot of hyphenated names.
Right.
My goodness. So there's certainly a lot of guys there, fighting for that third, maybe 4th spot, depending on, how many tight ends they decide they want to keep, when the season starts. So, I'm curious to see. I'm sure he's extremely athletic. I'm curious to see how it translates to the football field. Um, if anything, could we maybe get a one-on-one game with him and Myles Garrett in basketball? Maybe
My money's on Myles.
maybe with some pads on or something, so they don't get hurt or something. But
Myles don't need pads. You see them biceps, man.
I know. Maybe just put them in like a bubble or something, so they can't get hurt or anything. But I would love to see that one-on-one matchup. I'm sure on the football field it won't even be a contest, but maybe Santos Silva could hold his own on the basketball court a little bit against Myles Garrett. So, if anything, I would love to see that battle.
Oh, for sure, man. That would be entertaining as hell. Is there anything else you want to discuss before we get on out of here?
I don't think so. I think we covered a good majority of it. It's just exciting that football season is here, and obviously we'll be here a lot to talk about it. I think both of our work schedules are much better off than they have been recently, so it's definitely going to give us more of an opportunity to get together and talk about news more often. So I'm looking forward to it, looking forward to the season, and like I said earlier, it's crazy that this is our 6th year doing this.
5th year, 6th season.
Yeah, it's
been wild, man.
It has been. So it's very exciting, and I'm glad I have you on the other side to rein me in sometimes. So sometimes it's hard to get a hold of me, but
it's all good, man.
I'm lucky to have a co-host like you on the other side. So I'm really excited for the season, and hopefully, we've been saying this for the past 5 years now. Hopefully, we're talking about a specific game in February when it finally gets here.
That is the goal, man. And it's the feeling is very mutual. I'm glad to have you on the other end and still doing this podcast 5 years later as we enter our 6th year, so our 6th season. So yeah, it's definitely good to still be doing this with you, man. Oh,
No, I'm good.
all right. So you guys can follow Anthony on Twitter at Anthony Jokey. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Jack McCurry08, and also follow us on Twitter at The Dogland. If you guys are listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave us a review, subscribe, share. You guys know the whole spiel. We just appreciate you all for sticking with us still as we enter our 6th season of the pod. We will be back with more content, hopefully get some guests on here during the preseason to talk some Browns football. But like always, guys, as we get on out of here, until next time, go Browns.